Hello friends, I am Prashant. You are watching Educational Stuff. Today I will be discussing the third article which is published in the Hindu editorial page. Today is 6th June 2020. This particular article is regarding the suo motu note of the migrants or beyond the legal counsel's predicament. The meaning of predicament is a situation at which the extrication is difficulty, especially in unpleasant or tiring one. Before we get into this article, let's understand what is suo motu. Suo motu describes an act of authority taken without any formal promoting from another party. The term is usually applied to actions by the judges taken without a prior motion or request from other parties. Rather unfairly, Solicitor General of India Tushar Mehta has been hauled over coals for his recent performance, or outburst as a legal correspondent chose to call it, when the Supreme Court had on May 26 decided to take suo motu note of the migrants' pitiable plight in the wake of nationwide lockdown. Tushar Mehta is a combative lawyer. He is not a jurist who needs to summon gravitas or scholarship. He is not a Fali Nirman, nor he is a Soli Sorabji. Nonetheless, he had earned the reputation of skillful adversary who does not flinch back from the scrap in the courtroom. He does his professional best for his client, a political appointee. And his client is none other than the Modi regime. It is necessary to remind ourselves that the Solicitor General of political appointee, which means whereas the Article 76 of Constitution of India places the Attorney General of India decidedly on the elevated perch, the Solicitor General gets a nickel and dime role. He becomes very much a part of ruling establishment's inner clique and cannot escape being sucked into the regime's daily fights and fancies. He cannot have the role or personality outside the performances or predispositions of the government of the day. Solicitor General Mehta's critics are perhaps not being fair to him when they because him was being disagreeably aggressive or needlessly arrogant. After all, he is only reflecting his client's temperature or temperament, his impulses and inclinations to the best of his ability. He is simply an instrument, a sharp and sometimes blunt instrument. Many have indignantly found Tushar Mehta's invocation of a vulture metaphor as a particularly acceptable and offense a slur and the entire journalistic fraternity. It did perhaps border on blasphemy because it was uttered the nation's highest judicial form. Mr. Mehta had subsequently tried to clarify in an interview with the Times of India on June 1, 2020 that the vulture imprecation was not directed at journalists. He is entitled to benefit of the doubt. And though it can be of no consultation, it is sobering to recall the equally invidious insults and innuendos have been hurled at the media by the ruling establishment. Mr. Mehta's aspiration pales in comparison to General V.K. Singh's disagreement. Yet again, it is not a personal inclination of the law officer or a cabinet minister that should detain us for too long. Rather, it is a collective sentiment of regime he represents that needs to be scrutinized by the democratic soul. Let there be no mistake, a cultivated mindset is at work. It seeks legitimacy for itself from the paraphernalia of elective democracy, but uses the democratic mandate to chisel away at the core of democratic arrangement. It is simply loath to give answers or explanations of any kind of anyone. Of blunted institutions, it is hardly a secret that these last 6 years the Modi regime has quietly but diligently and systematically made dysfunctional without dismantling all the establishment institutions designed to prevent abuse of authority. Offices such as Central Surveillance Commission and the Lokpal, the Central Information Commission, the National Human Rights Commission, India, the Election Commission of India, etc. have been rendered less than paper tigers. With considerable fiends and with admirable street smartness, the regime had seen to it that no Vinod Rai would be allowed to strike out or his or her own. The Modi crowd believes sincerely and righteously in the correctness of the chosen path. It mesmerizes itself with the notions of integrity and commitment of its personnel and leaders, and the infinite wisdom it resents democratic opposition. Not surprisingly, such regime sees no need to lend an ear to the vultures of the meaning of non-governmental or organizations. Let's come to the migrant issue of suo motu. In the determined preference to strike continuously, oppose decisiveness and a bold leadership, the incumbent regime not only failed to anticipate the consequences of its sudden, abrupt and panicky lockdown decision, it also refused to see millions of half-starved citizens trekking back to the safety and security of their villages. It was perhaps with a clear conscience that a Solicitor General could tell the top court that the government had a migrant issue well under the competent hands. He is a law officer who had secured from the apex court a kind of a carte blanche for his client to carry on with its confused nostrums. Perhaps the court had felt that given the enormity of COVID-19 challenge, the government was entitled to make mistakes and blunders, as also its insensitivity and cynicism. Thanks to persuasive arguments from the Solicitor General, the honorable judges probably felt that it was not their business to take note of immense hardship inflicts on millions of our own citizens. Mr. Mehta had secured for his client a free hand to carry out with its hit and trail experimentations. A tragedy could easily be foretold. A regime which has chosen to deprive itself of a genuine sources of information find itself left high and dry when human misery on unprecedented scale grips vast swaths of our citizens. Because the regime has developed a considered contempt for the free and independent media, it simply infused or refused to see images of millions and millions of hapless citizens migrating back to their villages. Confronted with the unexpected crisis and of unknown dimensions, the regime righteously resented anyone who pointed out the limits of its sloganized approach to the governance. When the court acted, then much to the regime's concentration, suddenly the Supreme Court had allowed itself to be goaded to seek answers from the government, from its bureaucratic insensitivity, for its political arrogance, for its policy confusion and its administrative clumsiness. It was that vote face that probably produced the Solicitor General a famous outburst. It is possible to suggest that Mr. Mehta's anger was directed not so much against the vultures among the journalists as it was an expression of impatience with the highest court. Unspoken resentment was that the Supreme Court was seeking an explanation from the government after lending its ear to those who have no knowledge of the ground situation, but the government would now not share information about the ground without anyone. The other day, the three professional associations of epidemiologists, public health practitioners and social medicine experts have called out the clumsy and confused decision making practiced by the leader-driven power structure. Millions have paid a heavy price for the regime's arrogance and incompetence. Yet the government would not countenance any discussion of its mistakes and missteps. Over the years, the regime had used heavy-handed approach to put its critics in their place. It has brought to bear overwhelming resources, power, prestige and skills to fix its critics. However small and scattered, neither Sudha Bharadwaj or Gautam Navalka nor the Pinjra-Todd activists in the northeast Delhi will be allowed to mobilize dissent and disagreement against the regime. It is this groupthink to intolerance and impatience that was on the display in the Supreme Court on May 26. Unlike it was vastly popular Hindi serial Tarak Mehta Ki Solicitor General Mehta can be very much said to be using a custom-made pair of spectacles prescribed by the regime in the house of optometrics. This is regarding the beyond the legal counsel predicament. The vulture remark is only a distillation and cultivated impatience with the structure of accountability. If you want to see, this is the end of the discussion of part 3. If you want to see the rest of the articles, I request you to see from the description link. Before I conclude, I request you all to subscribe to my channel for the further updates. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.